everybody. Welcome to What Drives Us, episode 263 for February 7th, 2018. My name is Russell Frost. I, as in the previous 262 episodes, have the pleasure and good fortune to be your host this evening. But luckily, not even luckily, there's no luck involved. This was contrived. People worked at this. We not only have an amazing panel, we have an amazing special guest and a pretty awesome topic. So let me introduce everyone and we will get into that, and you won't have to hold your breath wondering what's going on anymore. My wingman on this show, he is our man in Chicago with the Prius Prime, Mr. Tony Schaefer.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Glad to be here. Tonight, I have a Maplewood Brownie Points. It is it's a brown ale with hints of vanilla, and it is quite delicious. It pours about that dark.
Wow.
Maplewood Brewery in Chicago, Illinois.
I approve of dark beer.
Yes, I always approve of dark beer.
And our man north of the border, one of the founders of the Waterloo Region Voltec Group, Mr. Mark Coughlin.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. We have got a hot topic tonight. We'll see. We'll see how hot it gets.
No crappy clothing store jokes intended.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Do you have those in Canada? Those Hot Topic stores?
Yes, we do.
Okay, yeah. I don't know. I don't get out to the mall much. So
yeah.
Speaking of the mall, this is a man who, congratulations, by the way, to one of his sons for signing his collegiate scholarship deal. Is that what it is? I don't know.
Yeah, his national letter of intent. He's going to be running cross country and track and field with Rhodes College in Memphis and my son Brendan. So we today was National Signing Day, so he signed. We had a big event. And he was on TV news and the whole deal. So it's kind of a lot of fun and really proud of him. But glad to be on the show tonight. I came prepared with straight whiskey. Anytime Ed's on, I got to come fully loaded.
And loaded you will be soon, sir, I'm sure. Speaking of loaded, but he's not. Our man in Colorado, he is the founder of Boulder Hybrid. You can find him at boulderhc.com. Mr. Paul Guzik.
Hey, everyone. I'm not drinking straight whiskey. I'm drinking something awful called strawberry tart. I don't know. It was the last thing left in the fridge. And, yeah.
Somebody said that made more beer.
So, yeah.
I pucker up thinking of that.
Yeah.
So fans, please donate to Paul's beer.
Yes, that's right. Bring us some beer, please.
Don't follow Paul's lead. And finally, last and definitely not least, our special guest this evening. You've seen him on the show before. Journalist, co-founder of Daily Kanban, and our good friend, Mr. Ed Neidermeyer.
Howdy. Thanks for having me on again. I am currently drinking a fresh hopped Pilsner from Level Beer called Let's Play. Highly recommend it.
Ed, do you want to trade?
Right.
Can we do something?
We can fax it to each other or something. Yeah.
Exactly. If only that was true. If I go crazy halfway between the show, my headphones are shorting out. My voice is back and forth like some bad 70s band. It's really already I'm getting a little aggravated. So let's just ignore the technical issues and move on with the show. The reason Ed is here, on top of the fact that he's super knowledgeable and a real auto journalist, which I'm not, is that Ed, I had this feeling Ed followed the Tesla earnings call today. And the Tesla earnings call is kind of an interesting topic for viewers of this show, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit. So I'm going to kind of, Adam, I apologize for this without giving you warning. I'm going to dump it in your lap, and maybe you want to just touch on the highlights that you thought were interesting.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what tipped you off onto the fact that I was covering this. It might have been the 35,000 tweets. But yeah, I was listening into the call. I usually do, as anyone who's seen me on the show before or probably elsewhere knows. I'm kind of obsessed with Tesla. This was an interesting earnings call. I haven't really dug too deep into the financial numbers. Definitely their cash burn was not as bad as I think a lot of people expected. I think the deposit, I think there was definitely some controversy about the fact that deposits for the Semi and the Roadster appear to be going into the company's operating line item. Operating income, which made them operating cash flow positive for I think the first time ever. But that's a little controversial. I'm not an accountant, so I'm not going to weigh in too much on that. But that is an interesting point that I saw some folks talking about. To me, the really interesting thing about the call was just this sort of ongoing conversation that Elon Musk has been having with analysts for almost every call for the last, 2 years, just about manufacturing. And, it's the subject for Tesla. It's they do so many things so well, and manufacturing just isn't one of them. And yet, as we heard today, Elon just, I'm at a loss to understand what exactly is going on, but it seems like he maybe doesn't fully understand some things about manufacturing. He seems to think, basically, he kind of came out, and it was sort of like, one way to think about it is Shaquille O'Neal coming out, and back when he played basketball, I'm dating myself here. I know he doesn't play basketball anymore, but if you remember when Shaquille O'Neal played basketball, he was a terrible free throw shooter. And guess what? It didn't really matter, right? We really wanted Shaquille O'Neal on their team to be a good free throw shooter. And today, the way Elon Musk was talking about manufacturing is a little bit as if Shaquille O'Neal came out and did a press conference back when he was playing basketball and said, you know what? I am going to become the best free throw shooter in the league. It's not just that it's implausible. It's also that nobody really is asking for what he's offering. Like, everybody would be happy if, for example, to continue the metaphor, if Shaquille O'Neal just said, look, I'm going to practice. I'm going to try and hit 50% of my free throws. People have been like, cool, improvement, great. That's what we're looking for, right? But instead he comes out and says, I'm not going to miss a free throw ever again. And so, like, when Elon Musk comes out and says, Tesla's real product is a factory, I mean, it makes me a little bit crazy. I wonder, what makes him. So maybe you guys have thoughts about that. Maybe you guys, can figure this out for me, because I'm at a loss.
So the real product is a factory.
The machine that makes the machines, I think. Is
right. Well, okay. I would say that to say that would be accurate if the machine was correctly and consistently making machines. You see what I mean? If the product is the factory, the product is flawed because
I think part of the call too, didn't he sort of admit that, or I don't know, I don't want to say sort of admit, didn't Elon flat out state that the partial manual line was actually going faster than the two automated lines?
Right. And that's for the battery production. So that's where they take the cells and put them into the battery packs, which is where they've said they have the real bottleneck for Model 3 production is. Today, they did talk about another bottleneck, which was the sort of parts sorting line or conveyor belt, rather, conveyor system at Fremont. They said that that's sort of somehow an issue as well, but they've been, for the last several quarters, they've been talking about battery production. And he did admit on this call that it's ironic because, like, turning cells into batteries is the one thing that they have more experience at, than most other automakers. Like, making the car part, I think they have lots of excuses for why they're not very good at it. But manufacturing batteries, like, the fact that they're having a problem with that shows this is not just about cars and like why the fact that cars are hard to make. This is about the fact that manufacturing in general does not seem to be a very good culture fit with sort of Tesla as a company. And that to me is doubly troubling, right? It's one thing to be bad at making cars because that's really hard. To be bad at making anything, including the thing that you're supposed to be sort of, the expert at, like that's really worrying.
He did mention, of course, that they're learning an awful lot about manufacturing now. So
they're learning
maybe
from their mistakes.
That might be a bright spot. They are learning about manufacturing, and they're starting to maybe break down some of this stuff so they won't experience it again.
Here's the statement from the call from Elon, quote, The competitive strength of Tesla long term is not going to be the car. It's going to be the factory. We're going to productize the factory. And really, this is a lesson that is kind of obvious in history because the Model T wasn't the product. It was River Rouge, which refers to the Ford factory. Back to the quote. The Model T was a very simple car. Anybody could have made that car, but not anyone could make reverters. And that's really what Tesla's long-term competitive, and that's really what will be Tesla's long-term competitive advantage.
I think he said River Rouge,
Yes.
which says
Yes.
River. It's probably a bad transcript. Yeah. And so that's an interesting thing to say. I kind of feel like there are, there are stages of, and I say this having gone through this myself, of sort of, educating yourself about manufacturing in the car industry. I feel like there are stages to it. And like the very, very first stage is you read something about, the Model T, and you understand that the real innovation was not the car. It was the assembly line. And I think that's sort of what he was trying to get at. And he sort of said stuff like this for a while. But I think, that's like really, really low on the sort of steps of understanding. And I'm still waiting for him to get to the point where he understands that since in the last 100 years, there has been another really significant revolution in the manufacturing of automobiles that is much more relevant to the car industry today than Ford and the moving assembly line, and that's the Toyota production system. He was actually asked about that on the call today by Brian Johnson, who is probably my favorite Tesla analyst. And I have to say again, his answer, I mean, I tweeted this and I'll just say it again. I was genuinely embarrassed for Elon Musk. And this, look, what happened yesterday, and I think we might talk about this, later in the show, the rockets, space, I'm literally in awe of this guy when it comes to certain things. But man, when he starts talking about about manufacturing, particularly car manufacturing, it's really reached a point where it's embarrassing. And I think what's really most embarrassing to me is the fact that it hasn't changed. Right? You're talking about learning from experience, learning from hard lessons. I think that's a good point. And I've been really, really trying to find sort of points that can kind of indicate sort of that learning is taking place. But he has been saying the same stuff about manufacturing for, I think it's about 2 years now, a year and a half, at almost every car. And he always talks about like the line speed, and he did it again this time. And I've talked to so many manufacturing people since he started doing this, and every single one of them are like, every time he says the most important thing is the speed of the line, it just proves how little he understands about manufacturing, specifically the revolution in manufacturing that came out of the Toyota production system. And so the fact that he continued to go through that same sort of, jag again, that's what's really scary, is that it doesn't seem like the learning is happening. Meanwhile, also, I think there are signs that the quality may not be improving as much as some people might have hoped, but that's a harder thing to judge.
Come on, Evan.
Yeah, well, Philip Barclay has the idea that Elon could just sell more flamethrowers. Yeah. So there's always that.
Yeah. So again, I don't know jack about manufacturing, so I won't. I'm not gonna chime in here. I mean, I guess the only thing I'd say is, it's treacherous waters to start doubting that he'll accomplish what he wants to accomplish. But at the same time, when it's been going on for a long time and he doesn't seem to be adapting and making the changes necessary, then I think you've got a point that you have to start wondering if he has the right people that he not only in place, but that he's listening to make the necessary changes to understand what has to be done.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I mean, let's do the rundown. So Fremont, SNX is slated to do, if I'm not mistaken, Ed, and I'm checking me on this, similar sales than it's done in the last 2 years, because they are quote unquote supply constrained.
That's what they say. Production, by the way, they say it's because the 18650 size cells, right? That's the only cars that goes into. They're not building more of those cells, so they're not going to build more of those cars. But keep in mind, Model S and X production combined has been flat for 18 months now. That's 6 quarters. It's been at 25,000 units a quarter. Model 3 production may or may not be going. It's going better, but we don't know where it's going and how much better it's going. We're up to what, Mark? VIN number 6,000?
6,500.
Okay, 6,500. But we don't necessarily haven't seen everything in between.
No, they're spotty. Yeah.
It's really spotty. Gigafactory still isn't built out and has production issues. Buffalo isn't built out and has production issues. This is a common theme with Tesla, and it's not me just whipping ass on Elon Musk because I think he's annoying. Elon's, like you said, like Ed said about the SpaceX thing. You see those two rockets come down at the same time. That's pretty fucking mind blowing.
So do you think the board of directors doesn't have the balls to oust Elon?
Yes, I absolutely. Because the company is Elon and Elon is the company. And no one's going to oust Elon.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
It would have to get a lot worse for that to even become a possibility.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, well, and especially when you look at their stock, it's been tremendous, right? I mean, so
it's not
investors are happy and that makes the board happy, and until something shifts that direction, it's unlikely. I think you'll see change.
You think they wouldn't just like wave a big sack of money to like the head of Toyota manufacturing or GM manufacturing or something, and get someone who's really done it before to run that side of the house?
So the thing is, they've brought in people with a lot of experience, and their current head of manufacturing, Peter Hocheldinger, is Audi guy, lots and lots and lots of experience. The problem is that, and to the extent, and I don't know how people's familiarity with the Toyota production system is really goes all over the place. Lean, it's sometimes called, or Kaizen. There's lots of different words for different versions and elements of it, but the core of it, really, if you boil it down to one thing, is culture. Right? Toyota essentially recognized that you can automate simple tasks, basically with robots, right? But a robot, and certainly at the level of technology when they started doing this, robots certainly could not spot defects. They didn't have any flexibility. And so essentially they decided, or they understood that to make a human's part of the machine, you need to have a culture that is both flexible enough to allow humans to do the things that we're good at, which is spotting things that are out of ordinary, noticing patterns, noticing breaks in patterns, things like that, while at the same time regimenting it. And so I totally get what you're saying. I worry that, bringing someone in, first of all, they've tried it, but second of all, putting a problem like this at any one person's feet, including Elon Musk, doesn't make sense, because manufacturing succeeds or fails because of the culture of the company. And that to me is also why this situation is really scary. It's a really scary problem to have, is that, culture also, we know, takes a long time to turn around, like decade. Like we've seen I've written, actually, before I started writing about Tesla, mostly what I was writing about were the Detroit automakers and their struggles to sort of bring their cultures up to the modern standard that Toyota and others had set. And man, it takes a long time. And yeah, it's scary.
I mean, if you've read any of the history of NUMMI and how much GM struggled to emulate Toyota, I mean, struggled to change. It's that sort of large corporate juggernauts have inertia built into them, and it's hard for them to change direction. And culture is that sharpest turn in some ways.
It seems like that should be Tesla's advantage. Then they don't have that big corporate juggernaut. They're coming in de novo and should be able to start from the ground up. Really, even now they're not that big, and I wouldn't expect that shouldn't be their biggest issue. Though it seems like they grew faster than their ability to establish a good base of a culture in the company.
So I put up, I'm screen sharing here a book. I don't know if it's really kind of hard because it's portrait. I'm sure Ed's familiar with it. Yeah, it's called Crash Course.
Yeah, great book.
The American automobile industry's road to bankruptcy and bailout and beyond. If you want to know what Ed's talking about turning around the culture of the Detroit automakers, this is the first book you need to read to get a feel on that. It's very insightful and scary at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's what's interesting to think about is the fact that Toyota and Tesla were actually partners for a while. And to me, this is like the single biggest. If you pick a moment in the history of Tesla, where things could be very different today, with one little thing being different, it's that relationship. If that relationship had endured, and if these two sides had sort of really both recognized how much they had to learn from each other and embraced it and grown together, man, I mean, I think that would be just an absolute juggernaut of a combination. And it's interesting talking to people who were there and who are part of that experience. And I think, and this is just my feeling, well, it's more than just a feeling, it's based on what people have told me as well, but I think that part of the issue here is that actually, because Tesla was exposed to Toyota, especially at a time when Tesla itself was not really going through, I mean, they were going through growing pains, right? They were ramping up to the Model S, which was a big transition for the company. I don't want to minimize that, but it's very different to go from, up to, they were planning for 20,000 units of production a year at that point. And now we're talking about going to 500,000 units of production. We're talking about real mass market now. And I wonder, so Toyota, when they went into that relationship, they wanted to learn from what they call Tesla's enterprise culture, which basically means they're a Silicon Valley firm that was nimble, could do things fast, could make quick decisions. They were a small company and everything. And Toyota at this point, and I think it's still to this day to some extent, still uses a lot of paper in their office and very old fashioned in a lot of ways. And I wonder, and I guess I theorize that maybe Tesla was exposed to Toyota, sort of got to work with them up close. And their initial impression was just, wow, these people are so conservative that just turned them off. And they hadn't yet grown to a size where they understood why that kind of conservative and slowly evolving culture, continuous improvement culture, is so important. Because I think you can't really appreciate that until you get to be a certain size. I don't know. That's just my theory.
Well, it's like you had said before, that Elon keeps going back to line speed. But, the Toyota culture is it's okay to stop the line.
Yeah.
You don't need the line to go faster. You just want the product to be better.
Yep. And actually, there's a fascinating, so Tesla, right now, you can go to tesla.com/careers or whatever their job listings are. And they have a bunch of job listings for remanufacturing positions. And this is one of those things, just exactly like you said, right? So the Toyota production system, if someone sees a defect, doesn't matter, you can be the lowest paid grunt on the assembly line. If you see a defect, you can pull this cord undone, and it will stop the entire factory. The whole factory will grind to a stop, and Toyota will start burning tens of thousands of dollars or more a minute while this line has shut down because some grunt saw a defect. But the reason they do that is because they would much rather have that stop of production, go back, find the defect, create a systemic fix for it, and then restart the factory up. Because everything you do, when you do it on an assembly line through a standardized practice, it will be efficient. So what Tesla is doing now is they're hiring people for what's called remanufacturing positions, which means after the car comes off the line, then if and when there are quality issues with it, it goes to this facility. I think the main was at Hayward, and they do work, after work on it, post line sort of repair work or whatever. And that's never standardized. And you can tell from the job descriptions that these workers have, free reign to sort of, decide what needs to be fixed and what's worth it and what's not, and all that. And that is what the Detroit companies did before the Toyota production system became universal. Keeping the line moving and then just fixing it in post, so to speak, was the standard operating procedure. So Tesla is actually taking a step backwards in the industry's understanding of what works in manufacturing. And again, if they had results to show for it, great, do something different. But if you're doing something different than everyone else is doing and your results are worse.
Right. Yeah, it's just crazy they can get away with it, the way they are.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it is the product category and the products. If they were making gas cars, does anybody think they'd be in business?
Right. And, Philip in the chat said, all this doesn't seem to dent Tesla's stock.
Right.
It's not. Right.
And I don't know that. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that it should necessarily, but the warning signs for this are pretty clear. And I think I said a week or two ago on the show, I mean, this is a hugely important year for them. for Tesla, and they've got to kind of get their act together, because if they don't deliver, 2019 is going to be ugly really quick, in my opinion.
Yeah, and interesting you say that, because we've talked about that a lot on this show and on the Tesla Life show about how this was a different clientele, and we had Yo-Yo on the last show, and we asked him his impressions, and the first thing he said is what we've been saying all along. It wasn't what he expected. His expectations were that this was going to be a ready to go, much tighter vehicle, much cleaner, not a beta, as he was sort of told that it kind of would be. And you're right. I mean, the expectations are very, very different than when I took delivery of an S in 2012. Things have to be different and better, or they are going to get in trouble, and the stock will start taking a hit.
Yeah, they have to learn from their mistakes. It's not enough just to kind of blowhard your way through it and go, hey, we launched a rocket yesterday, which is awesome, but it doesn't mean that you can get away with, not being profitable in some other division.
Yeah, that does come into play is with the different diversity of what Tesla is or what Elon is that playing into part of these misses that are happening during earning calls? Is that something that the focus has to be on the car manufacturing alone? Let's not worry about boring tunnels or selling hats and flamethrowers. Let's even though it's fun and it's a good laugh and it's interesting, maybe there has to be something else done about that. That this thought process that's all over the board has to be laser focused on an issue to fix it.
It's interesting that SpaceX, which I think is a really good fit for, as we were saying, for how Elon's sort of mind seems to work, he's got a COO there, right? Gwynne Shotwell is widely acknowledged to be a really important part of what makes that company so successful. It's really strange to me, given that he doesn't seem to be as sort of constitutionally sort of, adapted to the kind of work that the car industry requires, that he hasn't brought in a COO there. I wonder if that's related to all this. Well, is it an ego thing? Like, it kind of suggests that this is an ego thing.
Is McNeil leaving and not being replaced an ego thing?
You're asking me, or
I'm asking anybody who wants to answer.
I think not having him replaced is not the right choice right now. I think they've got some real service issues they need to be addressing, and having Elon's just going to do that. He's just going to be the guy people tweet at and tag on TMC when they're having a problem. Doesn't seem to make sense.
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. You know what I mean? Wasn't the story that Elon was sleeping on top of the Gigafactory to get products done, and now he's going to take over sales?
Sales and service. Global.
Service, pardon me. Yeah, because he's got so much time.
He's going to be driving a Ranger truck soon.
Yeah, I just that seems to me to be sort of the kind of hubris that scares me about Elon. When Eric Stevens in the chat says he doesn't think Musk should be CEO, I would tend to agree. I think Musk is a great visionary. He's getting to be a better salesperson, and obviously there's a lot of things that he does right, but there's a lot of things that he needs help with, and I don't think he's getting help.
Yeah, and is on his own accord?
Yeah, or asking for it.
If he's not getting the help, is it because he's not looking for the help?
Or accepting the help?
Accepting, I think that's right. I mean, how many, I don't know. I personally know of several instances of people being fired from Tesla because they think that they have a very serious problem that either Elon or someone else high up in the organization just doesn't think is as serious as them. And they get fired for it. So there's definitely some elements to the culture that suggest that he doesn't want to hear this stuff. And because I agree, with the manufacturing, they've had people who could tell him, here's how, let's sit down, I'll explain the Toyota production system to you. He either doesn't understand or he doesn't want to understand.
Doesn't want to listen.
Yeah.
Or is it a culture, as we've heard from some others, that Tesla has to do it their way? They don't go. They don't follow the norm because the norm didn't get them to where they are today.
Well, and And speaking of the norm, Elon ate a little tiny crow, a little bit of crow pie on Model Y, which, by the way, this guy right down there, that dude, nice Leica the other day, by the way. Wasn't that you, Ed?
That was Ed. That was Ed on his Twitter feed.
The Model Y rollout.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Come on, own it, baby, own it.
Yeah, no. I'll own it. I mean, I'll take credit for him putting that on the Model 3 chassis. Remember, he was saying that he wouldn't put it on the Model. It was going to be the Model Y was going to be its own platform. And then, I mean, I wrote a piece. I'm sure it was all because of me. I'm sure he reads my stuff very closely, takes my advice very seriously. But yeah, and then they, and it's like the piece I wrote was just, this is auto industry 101. If you take the time and money to develop a new platform, you can't just put one car on it and move on to the next thing because, and I think we talk about ego and we've talked about some other sort of elements to this, but I think attention deficit, and again, I say this not in a judging way. I say this as someone who suffers from attention deficit issues myself. I see the hallmarks of some serious ADD going on with this company and just sort of like wanting to, okay, things aren't going so well here. Let's just go on to the next thing. Let's just go over here and go over here. And again, the car business, the reason I don't work in the car business is because one of them is that I am not constitutionally set up to operate in this very methodical, patient, incremental way that is proven to work in the car business. I know myself well enough. And it concerns me that maybe, Elon doesn't understand that about himself.
I don't know. The Model Y chassis thing was funny that he backed off on that and said, yeah, we're going to put Model Y on Model 3 chassis.
Mm-hmm.
Which should be the easiest decision.
I know. It's when you just say it, it just makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that goes around designing and developing a new chassis, which changes the dimensions of everything else. Yeah.
But Tesla, I'm sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Sorry, I just got an email now, how ironic, from Tesla. It says, thank you again for your support as a Model 3 reservation holder. Blah, 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 blah. As we work hard to meet demand, we wanted to let you know that your estimated delivery timing has been adjusted to a slightly later window. You can log into your Tesla account to view your delivery estimate at any time. Thank you for your patience. Blah, blah, blah. So,
yeah, we've been seeing today. Yeah, we've been seeing that today. A lot of people have been pushed back about 4 months on the window. Yeah.
I thought they were pushing people forward.
They were.
And now they're not. Okay.
Well, I got pushed forward.
Because the guys in Hayward are still duct taping the emblems on and stuff.
So basically what the email says is, hey, it's Tesla. You know that great feeling you have of anticipation of getting your new car? Well, you get that anticipation 4 months longer.
Yeah.
Doesn't that feel great?
But in the meantime, watch this cool rocket going up into space.
Right. In the meantime, we're just going to start shooting cars into space just to spite you.
Your car is slated for the next space mission.
We're delayed because we're sending more up into space.
Click here if you think that's cool. Okay. Tesla has always wanted to do things their way, and I think that comes from Elon. I think Elon said enough things. I mean, just to designing their own plug, which may have made sense in an independent way. But I mean, the other plug was ugly. So literally, that was his quote. He's going to make a prettier plug. Okay.
Right. And like you said, in some ways, in some regards,
stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, to be a differentiator, to put a dent in the universe, in some cases, individuality and being unique, that's a really good thing. But it does come around and kick you from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a balance to be struck, and his freewheeling behavior has been strongly reinforced, right? And so he's much more likely to continue that and repeat it, and to ask him to pull back and change that when he's been reinforced in the other direction is tough. It's a tough call. And again, that maybe this cycles back to what we've seen in the chat room, what we said here. Maybe he needs to have a different role as kind of a advisory, visionary kind of individual rather than quite, sleeping on the factory floor kind of guy.
Yeah, I have to wonder if he's hit too many home runs. I kind of hate to say it. I don't wish ill of him, but he's had a lot of really high profile successes, over the last many years.
And you're saying that may cloud his judgment.
I think it does. It's I can do anything I want because look, I've done this, I've done that.
And you're right. You can't argue with it because he has done those things and he has done them extremely well. And it is something that, from us from the outside, counting these things, it's like, we're shocked with every win that he comes up with. And when he comes out with an outrageous statement, we are now thinking, you know what, he could probably do it because of what he's done in the past.
Right. So Falcon Heavy yesterday, he walked out and he looked at it and he said, it seems a bit small. All right. I mean, he just launched the most powerful rocket ever. I mean, it's the way his brain works. He keeps striving, reaching, right? And you're right. I mean, there's maybe when in this world, he's got to dial it back to some degree, to find that balance of the innovation and the practicality.
Well, and I think it was a really good point brought up earlier, which is that, like, it's not just right. His success has clouded his judgment, but I think also from us, from the outside, we want to believe that there are people like this that can do anything, right? I think inside everybody, and there are so few examples of people that we can look at and say that person can do anything. That person, if they put their mind to it, they can do anything. And that's what's so cool about Elon Musk, right? He is that person. But I think what we may be learning here, and there's a lot of, no one knows how this will all shake out, and they could turn this all around tomorrow. It's certainly possible. But I think that maybe one of the lessons that we may learn out of this whole experience is that, that's a vulnerability for us too. We want to believe certain things so badly that we will then tell ourselves that they're true. Even when there are a lot of signs pointing to, indicating that maybe that's not the case.
Yeah, I'm glad that he was born in South Africa because I hope he'd never run for president. There's enough people who I think would vote for him. That would be a train wreck.
I thought you were going in another direction with that.
No. People would say, Elon Musk, hey, he could run the country. What could possibly go wrong?
Russell is speechless.
Wow, I killed the show.
No, I don't want this to be like an Elon bashing show, but I think one of the problems is because Tesla's a very top-down company, and it's a very Elon company. Mm-hmm. And Elon's responsible for the good and the bad, but he's not owning, in my opinion, he's not owning the bad, and Tesla isn't improving at the rate that they need to improve on. They need to learn from their mistakes. The scary part is somebody like Nissan or Toyota is going to come in and eat their fucking lunch because they're good at doing what Tesla isn't good at, and they're learning, they're seeing what Tesla's doing, and as the market matures, the likelihood that this is going to happen, I think, increases.
Yeah, they won't be sexy cars. They'll be, they'll start with Chevy Bolts, and then they'll be very, conservative but well-built, high-mileage cars, and people will say, huh.
That you can actually get at a dealership.
And that you can actually get a dealership, yes. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the Tesla direct sales method at all, but I'm saying if there's 20 of them sitting on a dealership lot and somebody can drive off in it, that's a more compelling buy in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Did we see some improvement in the earnings call as it relates to Model 3 numbers? I heard that they are going to reach 2,500 a week at the end of next month. Or no, in next month, which to me automatically pushes to the end of the month. Right. But are we really seeing, from them extrapolating in the last quarter's call that we were almost at 1,000 a week, and now they're saying in another month we'll be at 2,500 a week? I didn't hear an actual number that they're at today.
Yeah. So I was reading a note by Brad Erickson of KeyBank. It was an analyst, and happened to get his reports. And they talked to sales centers, Tesla sales centers, and he said we spoke to 16 sales centers in the U.S. and found few signs of progress versus the implied delivery run rates at the end of the quarter. And I think that's it kind of gets to one of the perennial issues around Tesla manufacturing, which is that they do bunch up at the end of the quarter. And anybody who knows auto manufacturing knows that for optimal efficiency and quality, you want to be operating at a steady state all the time. And the fact alone that Tesla, for whatever reason, and I still have not found anyone who can give me a good reason for why they do this other than maybe cash management, why they bunch up all their production at the end of the quarter. Now, I think at the end of Q4, it made sense because they wanted to prove like they were behind on their projections, right, on their guidance for Model 3 production. They wanted to say, well, in the last week, we hit this rate that implied 1,000 a week. And, but again, the problem with doing this is that you've either done it or you haven't, and you can't fake it, right? You can either make the cars or you can't make the cars. And at what point do they keep sort of saying like, well, we can kind of make the cars at this rate, and then, well, people aren't getting their cars. Like, how long can that go on?
Yeah, the extrapolation of short-term throughput is it's just not accurate. If I continued accelerating at the rate I accelerate off a green light, then I'll be at 100 shortly.
Yeah, it's all just speculation.
So I feel bad for my friend Evan, who looks kind of sad, and he's kind of quiet, and that's not really like Evan. So I want to talk about something that might make Evan happy, and I want to talk about Falcon Heavy.
I think you're going to talk about his wife.
And what a success! But are you also? So I have 3 issues with Falcon Heavy. Are you ready?
No? The main and the 2 boosters.
Oh man!
Happy, get off my lawn, guy! Right? I can't be
dang.
amazed by those 2 landing simultaneously rockets. I
just
can't.
come shit on my head. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't want to. Listen, dude, you didn't design the rocket, okay? You're just a fan. Let it go.
I'm invested. I'm just.
You are invested.
Emotionally invested.
I love this stuff as much as you do. So, number 1, the most brilliant marketing thing ever in the history of the universe. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Elon doesn't just no advertising. Okay? I do this shit. Okay? And now everybody's got Starman on their Facebook cover picture for probably the next week. And before the show, we talked briefly, and I think the one thing they lost is they should have set it up somehow so they could have gotten continuing telemetry, continuing images from this, because, this week's Starman picture would have been huge.
Right.
Okay, the other 2 things, okay, that's the good thing. The other 2 things. Number 1, the 3rd rocket got lost. That's 2 out of 3 is not bad. Okay, but let's not get all super happy that everything was perfect, because that first one came down at what, 500 kilometers an hour?
Yeah, it made quite a splat in the water.
Yeah, it made a hole in the water. Number 3, overshooting the 3rd stage booster was a huge mistake that if NASA made, we'd be pissed because there'd be astronauts like circling the asteroid belt rather than going to the moon and coming back.
I don't think that was a mistake. That was, they just burnt up the fuel they had on board, so they had more reserves than anticipated.
That's not the way it's supposed to work.
Well, they're just shooting it into space. That wasn't a part of the.
I would also say that
prove that 3rd engine would refire after the 6-hour coast. That wasn't a mistake.
And I would say if there were astronauts on board, they would have more fuel in retro rockets. They could correct their path. So,
we hope.
Right. We'd like to think. Yeah.
That's all I got. I'm sorry. I just wanted to talk for a minute about the rocket.
Right, but that was absolutely fascinating. I'm sure that a lot of companies could probably measure their lack of productivity for about 18 minutes in the middle of the day.
And there was a fascinating, I thought, contrast, right, between I don't know how many of you watched the Super Bowl, but like the car ads there, which are like, the pinnacle of automotive advertising is the Super Bowl and most advertising, and like I don't know. It just, I mean, I kind of think that most Super Bowl ads are kind of lame anyway. Most ads generally are kind of lame, but like it really, really emphasized like what a giant gap there is in between sort of, one level of marketing, spend a lot of money on the Super Bowl, make some kind of clever ad, whatever. And this, and granted, right? Like it cost $1 billion.
Yeah. This wasn't a cheap ad either.
It's not a fair comparison, but still, it's pretty impressive. I guess someone who is very critical of Tesla, like the SpaceX as a marketing tool is the most brilliant thing I think that's happened in the car industry marketing wise in a really, really long time.
Yeah, I'll tell you, none of the pictures prior to the launch had Spaceman in the cockpit, in the seat. So, I mean, that was a great touch.
Sure. It's beautifully done. And it totally changed the conversation, because I would think the conversation would have been, you've got a 40-ton payload into space and you didn't send up not one stick of science. You sent up a roadster with a dummy in it.
Or a commercial satellite.
Well, they did add an arc disc to the car. So this disc contained human achievement information on a high density drive.
Humanity's achievements or Elon's achievements?
No, it's humanity.
One and the same.
It's humanity. And it was sent with the car as well. So if the car is ever found in the future, there's something in it that is more than just a car and a Hot Wheels car glued to the dash.
So
Russell,
I find it kind of funny that you're being critical. This was an experiment. It was an experimental first launch to see if the thing would even fly. There's nobody going to pay for any science to go on it, because there's a 50-50 shot it blows up on the launch pad. And so
but they could have got it.
And anybody else launching the thing wouldn't have even had the whole video feed online available to watch, because of the chances of this thing blowing up. And yeah, did SpaceX monetize it or whatever? Did they make it a big deal and kind of celebrate the possibility it might blow up so people would watch maybe something blow up? Yeah, sure. But to be critical because they didn't put a satellite or a science experiment on it, most people, when they test their rockets, they put a chunk of steel or a chunk of concrete in there for ballast, and that's all that it ever has. So at least this thing functioned. I mean, what we're going to call it, 90% successful on everything they intended to do. It's pretty on a first time experiment, and no telling how much they learned from this that they'll be able to apply to the next launch. So I don't know.
That's a good point. It is a good point that most of them will put a chunk of concrete in as ballast. That's all they do. SpaceX went above and beyond, and they provided something that was extremely entertaining to watch. And as Russell mentioned, is plastered everywhere on social media. Like talk about a home run when it comes to marketing. Unbelievable.
It is just a tiny bit ironic, though, right? That like, I see so much said about SpaceX in this, in terms of this in this context of like, this is humanity's only hope to, get away from this planet that we're polluting, or whatever. It's a little ironic that we're kind of pre-polluting space a little bit, maybe, so we can be like a little more comfortable when we get there. But that's just irony. That's not like real criticism.
Right.
And do you guys think it was planned to launch the rocket like the day before their earnings call, or was that just coincidence?
It did not hurt. I will say that.
Yeah.
It did not hurt at all. He got
took the eye off the ball.
The first two questions literally was like prefaced with congrats. We were joking on Twitter because normally it's congrats on the quarter, and this time it was congrats on the launch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably no.
So I had that picture for a while, but when I saw Spaceman, I immediately thought of the movie Heavy Metal.
Oh yeah.
And that
the opening scene of Heavy Metal.
Exactly, the opening scene in the space car.
Wasn't Spaceman formerly the Steak from Top Gun?
That was like one of the sticks. That's how they
send him up to space.
Jeez.
That's cold, man. That is cold. That's what happens when the Stig talks too much.
You get to test drive a really cool car.
Once.
It goes
We're gonna
really
strap you
fast.
in.
Yep.
Fastest 0 to 60 time ever.
Where you're going, you don't need roads.
That's right.
Did they take the battery out of that Roadster? Do we know? Was that like an actual complete car? Was it full?
Well,
It had some sort of battery in it that would allow the stereo system to work for about 12 hours.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the battery was.
I
You
suspect
didn't have
that
a
lithium is
Tesla
not.
solar panel on the trunk?
No solar panel. No.
I think they missed an opportunity right there. I mean, they could have kept a real battery in it, put a solar panel to keep it charged.
No,
And
no,
just
no. They
have
should have put a
space
power
oddity
wall
on
in
the
the
roof.
trunk.
Yeah, power
Right, and a power wall.
Yes.
You couldn't get me. Oh,
Could you imagine, just some distant, far off time, some alien culture comes upon this in their ship and they're like, what the fuck?
Actually, Elon talked about that exactly in after like in a post discussion after the launch, and he was saying, "What if this is discovered by somebody? What are they going to think? That here's this mannequin dressed up in a spacesuit in a car." That they don't know what a car is, but they know that it looks like it's something that people worship, obviously. But it's bizarre thought.
that is one hell of an alien hood ornament.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elon's great at a lot of things, but I think his number one talent is just making people feel like they're living in a science fiction, right? Like the fact that there's a red sports car out in space, it's just classic sci-fi. And I mean, right? That's got to be why he's so a big part of why he's so popular.
I think only he jumps up at 3 o'clock in the morning and says,
It's like, I got it.
If that was Elon's idea, he is brilliant. I mean, there's no question about that. It's just, it's.
I did see
You
Mark
should have had the
posted-
flamethrowers mounted on the side, for extra effect.
Mark posted on the Tesla Live Facebook page the comic of Elon walking out of the Gigafactory, and he's like, "Oh, another day. This feels good. Time to go home." And he walks out of the parking lot, and then he looks up, and oh yeah,
It's empty. Yeah.
Yep.
Just in case anybody hadn't seen this somehow, maybe living on another planet.
That's the last picture.
Yeah, that's the last shot before it was either out of range or the battery died or both.
Look how flat that Earth is.
Or went to the dark side of the moon.
How did they get that shot?
They had a
There's
a pro.
selfie stick on the front of the car.
Yeah, there were cameras mounted all around the bracket that was holding in place. And at certain angles, you could see the shadows of the cameras.
You could. Okay.
Yeah.
That's an amazing shot.
I love that he's wearing a seatbelt. That's the best part. You'll never be too safe.
And you can see the Hot Wheel mounted in the middle of the dash up near the windscreen.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Really unbelievable.
I mean, I do hope the car
But
comes.
is that car set to autonomous drive mode?
yes, it is.
It is now.
I just want to know if the summon button is going to work on that key fob.
Fireball comes.
I don't really want that thing coming back at me. Is all I'm saying. Like Elon's going to plant the key fob on someone he doesn't like and press the button, then run. So, I mean, there's back to the call. There was a few things. I mean, there wasn't anything. I don't think that was huge. Apparently, fewer and fewer people are buying the enhanced autopilot and the full autonomy package. That came out in the call. And did Elon reiterate? Did I see that like 6 months? He said.
He said 3 months, maybe 6 months, definitely. He basically said a version of that, which caused. I went straight to the Reddit and the forums. Everyone you could just feel the cringe.
For full self-driving, he's saying that?
So that was in the context of the cross-country drive.
Yeah.
Right. But
and that it would be available to consumers as well.
Right.
Which didn't make any sense.
Because he said himself that the coast-to-coast drive,
they could do it, but essentially they would have to hard code it, which like everyone who's around autonomous stuff, you learn very fast that like demonstrations on a fixed course can be faked super, super easy. And basically what he said, frankly, like the candor was kind of refreshing because he basically said like, well, we could have cheated and we'd have done it by now, but it would have been useless to anybody. And now we'll do it in 3 months, maybe 6 months, definitely. And we'll let consumers have it. But again, it was kind of confusing the way he said it. Does it mean they will be able to go across country in that one route? Does it mean that in 6 months there will definitely be EAP features? Does it mean 6 months there'll be definitely, full self-driving feature? Who knows? Like he likes to be vague and he gets rewarded for being vague all the time. So I can't blame him.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And people have asked me, I've advised them against the full paying for it. If you take that $1,000 and invest it now instead of paying for the full self-driving, you'll more than likely make more than the extra $1,000 it'll cost you when it actually is available and working. And if you crash your car before then, I'm pretty sure you're not going to get a refund on your money.
Yeah, and Deepak on the earnings call basically confirmed that. He says that a very small amount of people on the Model 3 are paying for the full autonomous driving. They're waiting.
Two things before we wrap up from me. One thing, Elon doubled down on no LiDAR, which, again, honest people can disagree on that. I don't know. Maybe Elon's right. Maybe Waymo's right. But he's saying that they don't need LiDAR and they're doing fine without it.
He said it's both a crutch and it's not really good because it can't can't read stop signs and stuff. I sense some internal logical conflict there, let's say. Frankly, I generally don't find frankly anything he says about autonomous driving very compelling. His anti-LiDAR pitch, I think when he was pressed on it today, I didn't hear. Again, I really try and keep an open mind with this stuff because I'm totally open to being convinced. I just didn't hear anything that convinced me. And
was there no talk about home energy on the call?
I think they said that they're going to like triple sales next year or something like that.
They did indicate that some of capital expense will go to that.
Right, but they didn't talk about. I didn't see anything about sales projections or losses projected for this year because that's dragging Tesla's balance sheet down.
No, they didn't mention that.
I think they did say that the solar roof factory would hit 150,000 units a year. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but I remember something along those lines. So they're going to do a slow ramp up to that. So it's not going to be like a huge volume product, but I think they want to ramp that this year.
No, I think they have to triple their sales to make up for the 50,000 homes that he gave away in Australia.
That's all I got, kids. Anybody else?
No. I'm dry.
I mean, I could go on for another hour, but nobody wants to hear that.
And please do. I'm just going to step out.
No, I'm just. What are we missing, Ed?
I don't know. I think we covered a lot of the main points. I was expecting a little more pushback, but it sounds like we're all a little bit more on the same page than I expected.
Stock is about 350, 345.
The stock isn't hurting, and
now the stock keeps going up.
That's the magic of Tesla. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is literally the magic of Tesla. That the stock, people's faith in this company goes beyond evidence, and they were right with Amazon, so I can't tell them they're wrong here. I don't know.
I will say I'm pulling it up right now. Well,
Ed's laughing a lot. What?
Oh, there was actually a study came out by Autolist. It's just a survey of some car shopping website, but basically they said 75% of respondents believed Tesla was a profitable company. If 3/4, and again, I have no idea how scientific, probably not very, but if any sample of people anywhere would say that 3/4 of them would say that Tesla's profitable, like there's something going on here. There's something that's making them think it's profitable when it's not.
Perception is greater than reality.
Yep. I think that's a lot of the Tesla story right there.
Your perception is your reality.
Yeah, you make it your reality. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is the magic of Elon. Look, there's a Starman in the sky. You know what I mean? Mary Barra doesn't have that.
No, nobody else has that. Nobody.
Got a couple talk numbers, and people are going to check those numbers and go, "No, Mary, you're wrong."
Yeah.
Elon can go, why? We're going to do 100 million of them in the first year, and everybody's like, "Okay."
So are you saying that Mary should invest in a space company?
I couldn't wait. Let's just, you know what? Maybe the lesson to take away from this, though, is that, here's a really good ending point. Maybe people still do like to dream, and maybe they need bigger things and even mundane products like transportation. And maybe that's the secret sauce. That's the magic of Tesla and SpaceX and the Boring Company and the stupid ass flamethrowers that shouldn't even exist. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like that's, you can afford to be serious when you're talking about your factory, but maybe you have to be a little more out there and a little spacier in other aspects of it.
Yeah, I sure wish that Tesla and like the established automakers would sort of meet in the middle, because I think they're just both are kind of car companies a little too slow and conservative, and Tesla, Musk is a little too out there and sort of seat of the pants. And I think that, again, like you kind of find a happy medium there, and I think everyone will be a lot better off.
I agree completely. Yeah, absolutely. Gentlemen, let's do some shout outs and go home then. Evan, are you awake? Evan?
No, I'm not.
You have
Leave me alone.
The whiskey's kicked in.
Yeah.
Let's see. Shout outs. I'll make one to I think Suzanne Nelson, who gave me a referral code.
Right on!
Yay, Suzanne!
Right on. Have you earned something exciting at this point?
I think I get a wall charger or another of those.
You get a replica of the Hot Wheel from this.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd take that.
I thought you got like Powerwall at 2 or 3.
A different quarter or a different cycle or whatever.
Bummer, man.
Yeah, so I start back over at 1.
That wouldn't be so bad.
And then February 1st, it turned over again, so I got 0 this current quarter.
I see. I had no idea. Well, Evan's referral code is?
I don't know. Here's the deal. So okay, if we're going to go into that a little bit. So the Tesla changed the referral program quite a bit this last quarter. And instead of the $1,000 in lifetime supercharging for free, you only the first person that uses a referral code for this period gets a $500 discount instead of $1,000. I don't think you get free supercharging. I can't remember if there's more to it. And everybody gets entered in a contest to go drive a Tesla semi to quote race the semi around their test track. So,
Oh yeah, that's a boring prize. I'm sorry.
I think it'd be fun as hell.
I don't want to. It might be, but it's not.
They should have it like race around a shopping mall indoors.
Right. Yeah.
With spikes on the front and a guy playing
Brothers.
Somewhere between Blues Brothers and Fury Road.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Speaking of Fury Road, Paul, how about you?
I'll just plug my company as usual, Boulder Hybrids in Boulder, Colorado. Our website's boulderhc.com, and we fix and upgrade and service hybrids and electric cars. So if you're anywhere around this part of the country, look us up.
Do you do any conversions, Paul?
Conversions from what?
Gas to electric.
No, that's futile.
Well,
if you have more money than brains, we can do it.
Yeah,
but
I had a friend that was looking. That's pretty much what I told him, but I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, that business is living in the past.
Yes.
I mean, if you have a really cool like '67 Mustang and you want to make it electric and you've got $50,000 burning a hole in your pocket, go for it. But if you want an electric car that's going to be reliable, buy a used Tesla for $50,000 and you'll be a lot further ahead.
Yep.
So
there you go. Mr. Neidermeyer, you must have something to plug.
The Autonocast is It's something I have a lot of fun doing. We don't really get into the manufacturing stuff that we talked about here today, but if you're interested in the autonomous, self-driving, future mobility, shared mobility, all that kind of stuff, check it out, autonicast.com, iTunes, Stitcher, Shout Engine. Even if you think I'm a jackass, my co-hosts Alex Roy and Kirsten Korsak are really great people. You'll hopefully enjoy listening to them. So yeah, check that out. And I'm also on Twitter at Tweedermeyer, so it's probably the best way to just sort of keep tabs.
Yes, and Autonicast is a great podcast. 50 shows. Congratulations on the big 5-0.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Very good. Yeah, it's an excellent show. If you want to do some serious deep diving on that topic with people that know what they're talking about, I highly recommend. I listen once in a while because most of the time I'm not smart enough to keep up with it. I get my handbook of acronyms out and I'm lost, But it's a brilliant show. Mr. Coughlin.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I did want to just prompt one more thing. If we've talked about it several times on this show, and I did want to let people know that it does now exist, and I've actually taken it for a drive. The Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid is now available, and it does exist. And it was a interesting presentation I was given on Tuesday, and took the car out for a ride for about half an hour, and it performed really well. It's a great vehicle. It's a full-size SUV, and it's got that plug-in ability for about 50 kilometers. It's about 30 miles, and it's a good start from Mitsubishi, and it's the only one in its class. So if you have interest in something this size, you can now visit your Mitsubishi dealer and take a look.
I saw one of their ads that said the world's largest selling plug-in hybrid SUV, and as far as I know, it's the only one that exists. But
then it is the most, right?
Right.
So.
Pretty easy.
Odd. Okay. Well, yeah, you, as we said earlier, you rode the unicorn.
And there we go. Yes, indeed.
Was it good in EV mode? I mean, how did it feel?
It was fine, and it had the ability that you could click on an EV button that it would try to keep it in EV as long as possible. It's not as good as, say, maybe a Volt, a smaller car, but it does keep it in EV with some aggressive acceleration. So I was glad to see that.
Cool.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yeah. Well, as usual, I'm going to shout out to all the people in the chat room. I was tempted to run through it and shout out names, but I'm going to miss somebody, and that would just upset them. So I'm just going to say hey to everybody who's there. Thanks for spending time with us. We do enjoy interacting with you during the show. So if you're listening to the show after the fact, then you're missing out on a lively chat.
There you go. As always, you can find us at facebook.com/whatdrivesus. Oddly enough, we're at twitter.com. We're on twitter.com. We're at What Drives Us at twitter.com. Like I've never been on Twitter before. Ask Ed. I'm the biggest pest on Twitter ever. And my favorite place, youtube.com/whatdrivesus. Please go there, hit the subscribe button, tell your friends, have them subscribe. Let's hit 500. We can do it. You, me, us, all of us. youtube.com/whatdrivesus. As always, I want to thank Michael Manring for our theme music. And that's all I have other than to thank our panel and an extra special thank you to Ed for coming on the show, an hour before the show started? I sent you a message on Twitter.
Yeah, don't tell everyone my schedule is that open on
I'm sorry. Oh yeah, no.
On a Wednesday evening.
When I talked to your social secretary 2 months ago, she said
maybe.
That's more like it.
Yeah, maybe.
And I told her only because I like Russell so much.
Thanks.
Yeah. Usually this is on the schedule as executive time.
Executive time. It's my 4:30 meeting for you Bob's Burgers fans. That's all I got. Seriously, guys, thank you. Wonderful show. Ed, thanks so much for coming on and being the man with the knowledge. I appreciate that. So that's it. Tune in next week. and find out what drives us. Was that really that loud?
Yeah, it really was that loud.
What happened? See you next week, folks. Thank you.